Hi everyone. Welcome everyone. This is a joint stream on Facebook and on YouTube. A lot of you have been asking for some new content and to do some more digging into different communities around the world. I've amassed quite a following through my coverage of like the Duggars and Sister Wives and other sort of organizations and groups that have beliefs that fall outside of the mainstream and have interesting mindsets about things, we should just say. And I have a keen interest in this world, in these worlds as well. And so many of you have been asking me, like, can we dive deeper into some other communities that maybe don't have a reality show or who are something that we should like, that we could learn about? And with that being said, if you watched last night, I did a live call-in, which was super fun. And by the way, if you missed it, I did a re-upload of it, but I had my subscribers join us and we were able to sort of talk about all the latest tea with the Duggars and Sister Wives. It was super fun. And one of my members, Holly Tuck, who is obsessed with sort of these worlds and communities like I am, told me about this group a couple months ago, and she was like, you need to check them out. These people make the Duggars look normal. And I said, okay, all right, we can do that. So last night, after I got off air, now the last half of that episode last night was hilarious. Holly was so funny. She had stories about Nathan Griffin and Janelle Evans, and it was a blast. So make sure you check that out if you haven't yet. She had stories about Nathan Griffin and... So now, today, I spent last night watching some episodes of this place called Gloria, Vale. So this is an organization. It's actually a closed community in New Zealand, and they are founded by a man named Neville Cooper. He started the community in the 1960s. And the group lives in a commune with limited interaction with the outside world. So he founded this organization. He was sort of this evangelical preacher, but he fell out of the mainstream and decided that he was going to do more of a fundamentalist sort of point of view. And with that, he crafted this community that started in Australia, but it ended up moving to New Zealand and now is on the west coast and was in New Zealand in a very small, tiny community. And they have actually created their own little world called Gloria Vale. Now they typically will refer to themselves as Cooperites, but this was their previous compound before they moved. So they live in communal living, and this is their compound today. So they have hostels in which the families live. So none of the families live independently. They have their services with church who are done by the older people and the people that are like the leaders in the company in the organization. They all work for the greater good of the community. None of them are paid. They're all designated jobs by the leaders. This is Neville Cooper, who changed his name to Hopeful Christian. And he was the leader of this organization from the 1960s until he retired in 2010. His granddaughter, well, I'll show you one more thing. They have a unique set of dresses. So here's a photo of them walking, and the men wear blue shirts and with like button down shirts and ties. The women wear these very long blue dresses that show nothing, headscarves, and it's incredibly modest because they don't want, Neville believed that women should not look like men, and that this entire organization is designed with women being completely subservient to men. Now here's an photo of them this is what a typical wedding will look like. Weddings are actually arranged by the organization. The girls' dresses are actually picked by the husband, and they don't know each other generally before they actually get married. So that's kind of the high level. Now, when we actually dive into it, there's an interesting aspect about this. So in the Gloria Vale, which is available if you'd like to watch it on Amazon Prime. It's this 3-part series, which goes through and talks about sort of life on this place. And it's what I would call at best a piece of propaganda, because it's putting together this sort of idyllic life of what it is to be part of this community, how everyone is doing everything for everyone, and everyone's like, they eat their community eating, they live in a community setting, they don't do anything apart. All of their decisions are made for them by the elders of the church. It's like watching propaganda. So I'll show you propaganda directly from their website. Yep, that's right. They have a website and you can visit them, and that's how they actually make a good chunk of money. And I'll mind you that this organization actually has a net worth of in like the 45 millions. It's insane. So it's Gloria Vale Christian Community, and they say that they are joined thousands of visitors who have visited us in person or checked out our website. You find out that we practical group of people bound together by a common faith in God and the hope for salvation. While the church at Gloria Vale exists to help people save their souls, the community provides the physical structure in which that occurs. The provision of work, education, housing, and full social life allows us to create a society that is Christ-centered and working on biblical principles. So this is like all of the kids, it looks like, and some of the adults. And it says all the buildings must have a solid foundation, and ours are written in the Word of God. Before we became a community, our members were part of a local church, and the foundation of that was the Word of God. One of our founding principles was to obey the Bible, not just to read it. Through prayer and discussion, the men who came together as our pioneering believers gained an understanding of God's will for our church. We did not just rely on 1 or 2 scriptures on topic, but searched the scriptures for everything that God revealed plainly in writing. So this is a very, I would say, fundamental group, let's say. So they have some interesting beliefs. They believe they're sort of a doomsday organization. You know, they believe in, they want you to be baptized. They believe everyone is a sinner. They believe that, we're all going to be born again. Blah, 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 blah. And here's the beginnings. So they started out in Australia. It was founded as an evangelist who wanted to see the Gospels practiced as well as preached. It began on Rangiroa on the east coast of the South Island of New Zealand in 1969. This development came after more than 20 years of evangelizing through Australia and tent missions. And then they moved to New Zealand. And when they moved to New Zealand, they started a private Christian school. So all the kids go to the same private school, and they're supposed to uphold to the New Zealand standards for education. They grew slowly as God tested our resolve and added the church daily, such as should be saved. Our foundation principles were established at Springbank through reading and practicing the Word of God. They bought property on the west coast of the South Island, opened in 1991. They have, they do, some of their biggest things is that they hold concerts, which outside visitors can attend. They believe in home births. They are staunch anti-medicine. So if they don't have to be involved with the medical world, they aren't, and they do not they don't believe in any sort of vaccinations, any kind of that stuff. So they're very, very traditional in this sense. They're very skeptical of the outside world. Members of this group are very guarded, and they don't get a lot of access to the world. So they control internet access. They control, what news is brought into this community. They control, they don't watch TV. They don't have access to hanging out with regular people. They go to school together. They work together. They eat together. They live together. So they don't even eat as a family. So if a family has, another big thing is they don't believe in birth control. So the families are large. Anywhere from, 10 to 12 kids is pretty common. There can be more. And even though these families are super large, they live in hostels. And so they live in these really large hostels together, and they don't have separate housing, which is making things really bad in New Zealand right now because of everything that's going on with COVID. They're having problems because this group is not abiding by the lockdown that New Zealand has put in place, and they're having a lot of complaints. And there's a fear that because this group is not abiding by the rules, that it could not only get into their community, because they say, well, it's not going to get into our community because we don't go out into the outside world, but that's not true. They do go grocery shopping and they go outside to buy things, and those people are not following the social distancing guidelines. So that we can talk about in another day, but this is sort of a high level. So they basically have one economy. And so we are guided by the need to work with our hands rather than to speculate with investments, to never borrow money, and to choose occupations that never compromise our faith. So they're farmers, they're dairy farmers. They say that they try to do, like, they grow their own produce, they raise their own cattle. People do not have a right to, like, choose whether or not their diet, what they like to eat. They can accommodate people that have sensitivities, like if they're gluten intolerant or if they have like dairy allergies, but people are not allowed to think for themselves. So they must eat meat. So if you don't want to eat meat, you don't have that option. And they are not taught to think for themselves. So from a very young age, they're indoctrinated into this belief system that they're doing all of these things for the community. So their economy basically works like this. The leaders of this organization, they decide when people become of age, and kids start working at a very young time. So there's a group of kids that are in high school that help every single day feed 500 people for dinner, and they help with all of the stuff in the lot, like all the cooking in the kitchen, and then they all eat in a community setting. Okay. Then the women in this community are basically, their goal is to have as many children as possible, and they are assigned all the domestic tasks. So everything is done as a community. Laundry is done as a community. So every family will drop off their laundry at the laundry, and then it's women that do the laundry. Women are the ones who teach the children in the school. Women are the ones who are like the midwives. It's everything that you can think of as a woman's job is what the women are doing. Women are actually the ones that make the food. They are cooking every single day in these massive kitchens for 500 people. It's insane. Now, if you watch the video on Prime, I would say, again, this is highly propaganda. There are probably better things that you can do, and I'll tell you in a minute of how to get a real inside peek. But they do dairy farming. They raise deer. And then they also have an aircraft. So they have a plane company. So they fly charters in New Zealand. They have fire brigades. They do tradesmen. So they have a mill. They process food. I mean, basically anything that you can think of that a community would have, this community has it. And they do almost everything in it. And then the elders, as people grow up, assign the different tasks. So, like, if your name is Steve, and they don't have those names, their names are sort of odd, but they'd be like, Steve, you're going to be tasked to work in the mill, and you are going to be in charge of processing all of the grain. And then another person named Josiah would be like, you are going to help out on the dairy farm. And so they don't have a choice of what it is that they do because it's all assigned to them, and they don't make any money. And so all of the money that they would make goes right back to the group, and all of the money is held by a trust that's run and sort of overseen by the top leaders. So as you can see, the leaders can end up with a lot of power. So they have really large family. They live in community living. They do home births. Marriages are assigned. So when they get married of age, and marriages start at a very, very young age. So kids as young as 12, 13 can end up getting married, 14, because the former leader does believe that once a girl reaches maturity, she's ready to have kids. And that's the sole purpose for women in this group, is to have as many children as possible. So when they get married, the women and the men don't even know each other. So a man will be assigned a girl by the group of elders, and they'll say, you're going to marry this person. And then that guy gets to go and propose to that girl, and that girl Typically, when they've become engaged, it's the first time they've ever spoken to each other, because the young boys and the young girls are not allowed to interact with each other. And all of their work that they do when they're not in school is segregated by the sex of their body, okay? They are obviously no birth control. They're pure, their purity matters. They do have social lives, sort of. They do activities, and they play instruments, and they do education, and then they have these really, really large concerts that are very over the top, very well produced, and this is done as a way, as a means for them to make income. So the group on itself, it wants you to believe it's very, very, very happy, engaging. We're self-sufficient. We don't need anyone. We just have each other. They're they wear blue dresses. Everyone wears the same kind of clothes. Women wear coverings. So they say, why do women wear covering? It has been a custom among Christian people for centuries for men to remove their hats when entering a place of worship, and for women to have their heads covered. Only in the last century did these traditions change. So they said head coverings such as scarves are worn as a sign to the angels that a woman has placed herself in submission to the authority of man. And so what happens is, when a woman and a man get married, she not only agrees to become his wife, but she agrees to fully submit to her husband. And so she moves from her father of submission to submitting to her husband. Very similar principles to what you see with the Duggars, where Jim Bob Duggar says, well, I have control of the girls while they live with me, but then once they move with their husband, they must submit to their husbands. They call themselves Christian. They say they pay taxes. They are primarily believe in prayer versus actual medical care. So they say our first solution for health issues is to pray. God has healed many of our people in miraculous ways. We also believe that prevention is better than a cure, and so we promote a sensible, healthy diet and also such activities as possible to prevent diseases that result from an unhealthy lifestyle. They don't smoke, drink alcohol, they don't drink tea or coffee, and they don't use any other stimulants of caffeine or any recreational drugs. So, and they try to limit the amount of sugar that they it's wild. They're very cut off from the rest of the world. And the women in this community are very much just to serve the man. And they decide to serve the man. They have no free will. Exactly. Lindsay says no free will. This is correct, because they have all of their decisions made for them. So because they live in community living, they don't have the choices of what they wear, what they eat, because the food is made for them every single day. Their clothes are washed for them. They're assigned jobs. They're assigned marriages. It's a mess, okay? It's total control by the top down. And because of that total control, it's created this imbalance and a lot of bad practices. Now, when somebody moves from a position of being when they have a commitment ceremony that they must sign when they are children, okay? Or when they become adults. And let me see if I can actually change this. I'm going to do something else here. Okay. So they have to do a declaration of commitment to Jesus Christ. And so when they decide to declare themselves members fully and completely to this organization, they sign this thing that says, I asked to be accepted to live in Gloria Vale as a member of this church and community, having all things in common with my brothers and sisters in Christ and calling nothing as my own. I understand that to live at Gloria Vale, an adult must support and abide by all of the declarations of commitment, and I will willingly do so myself. So they must follow all of the rules, and they cannot deviate or they will be kicked out. And that's why this group is in the news right now. A lot of people are leaving. It says, I have read all of what we believe as amended from time to time and hold it true of summary of the New Testament teachings and practices as applied to our life together at a time and a place. I take it all as my own faith and commit myself to practice and to obey what is taught. I have been immersed into Jesus Christ since I believed, and in order to bury my old sinful nature, to rise above in a newness, life in Christ, freed from sin. I believe that the church at Gloria Vale is part of the church that Jesus is building, and I will live here for the rest of my life. I believe that overseeing shepherd and the shepherds of our Christian church communities are called and ordained of God, and that he holds them in his hand. So they are supposed to believe that the leaders are basically gods. Not only that, they say, I willingly submit myself to them in love and faith in every area of my life and practical life as they live and teach according to the word of God, trusting in my heart that God will work out of his will overall as I do. I will neither hold nor teach any doctrine or belief contrary to what they teach. I submit myself like in love and faith of all other authority. So it's kind of like Warren Jeffs, if you think about it this way. The community itself has no choice in what it is that they are can believe. They can't believe anything differently. And their elders or the shepherds are gods. And you don't have a choice to think outside of what they tell you. And by signing this, you're basically saying, I'm going to listen to you no matter what you say. And if I don't, I'm going to go to hell. And it says any money, this is the part that has gotten them in a ton of trouble. Any money or assets which I ever give or help to acquire for Christian partners, the Christian Church Community Trust, or any other entity within the Christian community are to be administered without fetter by our overseeing shepherd and then other shepherds, and held in common for the benefit of all of its members or given to others in need. I will never claim anything back for myself, my relatives, or anyone else. So if they have a job outside of the community, which can happen with some of these people, and they get a paycheck, that actually goes directly to them. They don't get to touch anything, nothing. They don't get any money of their own. And this group actually got in trouble because they were setting up bank accounts for their members without the members knowing. And they say, I believe in the blessing of living in this community, our full recompense for any contribution and I will ever make towards it, receiving as I do the benefit of all contributions already made to others as the community. I realize that it can continue to operate for the benefit of members if they claimed reimbursement for their contributions to it. All of these commitments I will make to do this in church, community today, equally, blah, blah, blah. I make all of these vows and declarations voluntary from my heart before this church today, regardless as to whether I am bound or am abased or live in peace, persecution, and affliction. They bind me for the rest of my life, and not only legally and morally before men, but also spiritually before God. So it's kind of like, think of it this way. It's like the Sea Org in Scientology. They're basically signing this thing that says, we own all of the rights to you. We are signing a lifelong contract with you. We own you. And the children, so basically what happens is the kids are born into it. It's mostly a insular community, so people could join it, but most people don't join it. Most of the families that are part of this community have been since its inception and just sort of grown. And there's like just around 55 families at this time. So there's been a lot of documentaries. And there's been some critical ones. Now, there's the one on Amazon Prime that really highlights like, oh, the glories of everyone doing everything together and all of our money goes in one place, except they have no control of anything, right? So they're just little brainwashed minions. And it starts from the very beginning of their lives. So there was some investigations that were opened by the government in New Zealand who oversees charities. And because they have this trust and they're set up as a charity, they're supposed to be able to abide to all of the guidelines within the country's requirements and the continent's requirements, but they weren't. And so what they did was in 2015, there was a bunch of our news media stuff that came out where members were leaving. And the members leaving were sharing stories that they were forced to work, that they were coerced into marriages they didn't want to be in, that they were performing underage marriages. There was also allegations of the leader doing things to his children and to other girls and getting into situations where young girls were brought into hot tubs with the elders, and the elders would teach them how to do things for their husbands, let's just say. It is whenever there's this amount of power, there's always this like right place where scandals can happen and crimes can be committed. And the crimes committed here were definitely financial, women and men being assaulted of the intimate kind. And there has been members, and including the leader, has been convicted multiple times for his actions on his son and on other women and kids. So he actually spent time in prison. So Neville Cooper was jailed for almost a year on charges of doing those things to those people. He was convicted based on the testimony of his son and a young woman who fled the compound. He was then charged again. He changed his name to Hopeful Christian. He died in May of 2018. They had a teacher this past fall that actually was convicted for the same types of things. Neville, the members didn't even know that Neville was put away for those things. And it's kind of like Warren Jeffs, where they don't even think that they've done anything wrong, or it's all shielded away from them. So when they did this entire report, I'll show you what it looks like. They found a lot of serious wrongdoings, significantly things like in the declaration that I just shared with you, each member of the Gloria Vale community is expected to assent to the set of doctrines known as what we believe, which is a strict interpretation of the Christian Bible as decided by the leaders there. Each member of the church that wishes to marry and to be a contributing member is also expected to sign this commitment. The commitment document purports to hand over everything to the signatory has ever received irrevocably to the community. And the document purports to prevent the members from ever bringing an action against the community. The document is used as justification by the trust to obtain complete control over an individual's financial affairs, operating bank accounts, applying for passports, and other government entitlements. Former members interviewed alleged that they were coerced into signing the document, and have further alleged that many of the youth in the community are coerced into signing the document. Of the 11 who left, over 5 years, 9 signed before they were 18, and 1 left before signing the document. They've alleged the members are also threatened with shunning, removal from the community, and nothing being prevented from future contact with their family or friends, which is a humongous issue. A lot of the people that are leaving, they are completely cut off and they cannot talk to any of the members that are left. They say that there's bank account issues. So 7 of the former members interviewed have alleged that they never consented to nor acknowledged that the leadership creation was used the individual members' bank accounts, and they didn't know that the organization was setting up bank accounts in their names. 4 of them actually alleged that after they left, their funds were removed from their personal bank accounts without their permission. They also say that this part's crazy. They punish their members. So 5 of the four former Gloria Vale community members interviewed have alleged that once they informed the leadership that they were considering leaving the community, they were subject to punishments as a form of deterrent, which included detention in an isolated and sometimes dilapidated properties without their consent. They were also alleged that other members were still living in the community have been so in detention by leadership for breaching other rules of the community. So people have been kicked out for things like reading books that they're not supposed to read, listening to music they're not supposed to listen to, getting like a phone, or watching a movie they're not supposed to watch. I mean, really, if they don't follow the rules, they can really get kicked out. And what's happening is that if, say, it happens to the man of the family, they kick the man out, but they force the wife to stay, and she is not allowed to leave. And if she wants to leave, they typically have to flee by night. In some cases, the husbands will come back and sort of like kidnap their wives away. But the sad thing is that what they're seeing is that when people leave the community, because they've never learned anything to think for themselves or have real life skills of their own, they are so ill-equipped for the real world, because they don't know how to make any choices. Things like what to wear are huge issues for these people, or what am I going to eat? They've never had to consider, like, what am I going to eat? Or what do I think about things? Because they're not allowed to think for themselves. So they allege that they put these people in huts basically for a long period of time this is an allegation that's been made in Scientology as well, where they put people like Shelley Miscavige is allegedly in something like this because she didn't follow the rules. There's also been like tons of allegations about physical abuse, and that's how they handle almost everything. So corporal punishment is completely normal. Men are supposed to be running everything, and that means they're in charge of all the discipline, and discipline often is related to the kids, and it's corporal punishment. So they will do this to their wives, to their children. Teachers will do it to their kids. Coaches will do it to the kids. Humiliation is not uncommon. They don't want women to have a voice or a choice. The founder of this organization, his granddaughter, Lilia Tarawa, she wrote a book called The Daughter of Gloria Vale, My Life in a Religious Cult. I actually reached out to her on Instagram and I haven't heard back, but I would love to talk with her. She did a TED Talk where she talked about how when she was 6 years old, she got a report card back, and it said that she had great leadership skills. And rather than her grandfather being happy for her, he took that opportunity to tell the entire community during a meeting that his granddaughter had a skill that no woman should want to have. And she was absolutely humiliated, even though she had had really good marks and was being like completely like applauded by her teachers. She also discussed other incidences of things happening with her and her, that she witnessed of corporal punishment, it's bad. And if you want to watch her TED Talk, you can, and that was the title of her book. So there's been a lot of people that have been leaving, and there's a lot of stories that have been forthcoming. The craziest thing is that they say that there's been forced marriages, forced marriages, forced work hours. It's really hard to leave. And yet the government in New Zealand has really done nothing to stop this. They've really done, outside of a couple of them being arrested, they haven't really put sanctions in. The only thing that's really changed is that they have to get up to, so this report was done to get them up to compliance because they haven't complied with being a charity. And so what they want them to do now is they have to have people on a task force that are outside of this group that are intermediators, and they have to be like, they are no longer allowed to make decisions without the help from outsiders, which theoretically could help, but they're still not actually going to abide by it. And they're seeing that right now in regards to the isolation with COVID. They're not abiding by that, and there's concern that because of that, it could spread and that it'll become an issue. So despite every single thing that investigation found, they did not bring criminal charges against anyone, and they did not sanction the group. Way to go, New Zealand. But every single day, there are hundreds of people leaving, and so that's the good news. But it's challenging. They've actually set up a trust now where it's an entire set of funds that go directly to helping people who want to leave get established, get clothing, get education, get housing, find, integrate into the community, find ways to, become productive citizens. And some of the things that the people that leave say that are most compelling is that while they're there, they're told that anyone on the outside is wicked. And the people that have come out said it's crazy because what they experience coming out is that the people on the outside are exactly opposite of that. They're not wicked. They're really humble. They're really kind. They're really nice. And they soon realize that everything they've been taught is completely a lie. So what we're going to do is, since this is I don't want to get too much longer here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end it here. If you guys have any questions, concerns, or anything, let me know in the comments. Not in the comments. What I'm going to do is I'm going to re-upload this because Facebook or YouTube is being a mess. This will stay online on Facebook, but because I'm introducing this topic, we're going to keep talking about it. So this won't be the only organization or the only video we do about Gloria Vale. This was just me saying like, hey, this is what this group is. These are some of the scandals. This is some of the issues. I want to spend some time talking about the people that have left and really just like where they're at today. So we'll keep talking about it and get this wider out there. All right. So I hope you enjoyed this content. Thank you guys so much for being there. And thank you to Holly for letting me know about this group. It is a doozy, and we will continue to keep covering it. All right, you guys, please, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.